Hey there, everybody. It's Mr. White here with some notes for you about unemployment. So please follow along, and here we go. Now, the first question I want to start with is kind of a personal question. Are you unemployed? Yeah. Stop the video for a minute, think about it. It should be a pretty quick answer, but are you unemployed, yes or no? Just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation because even if you think you're unemployed right now, I might actually make you not unemployed by the end of this presentation. Now, how am I going to do that? You'll just have to wait and find out. Now, to talk about unemployment, I think a good place to start is to talk about what it even means, because I think a lot of people don't actually know what unemployment means. Maybe you thought you knew what it means, but you're going to find out more through this presentation. So the first thing is, let's talk about what it means to be employed. Somebody who's employed is a person who has a part-time or a full-time job. Now, what's interesting is they don't necessarily have to be paid. It could be a paid or an unpaid job. Like I had a friend in high school whose parents owned a convenience store. He worked for them every single day after school, never got a paycheck. But statistically, he's employed. Now, to talk about unemployment, we have to talk about something called the labor force. And labor should sound familiar. That's one of our factors of production. The labor force is just defined as the total number of employed and unemployed individuals in the economy. And so you'll notice here that it's a really simple formula. To find the size of the labor force, you just add the number of employed people to the number of unemployed people. That's your labor force. Now, to be in the labor force, you have to meet some common criteria. The first one is that you have to be eligible to work, which means over 16 in our country. So all those little crazy kids in the freshman academy that are 14 and 15 years old, they don't count towards the labor force. So even if they don't have a job, they are not unemployed. The other thing is that you have to either have a job or you have to actively be seeking a job. That means within the last 4 weeks. And this is really critical here, actively seeking employment. To be in the labor force, you also can't be in the military. You have to be a civilian. You can't be incarcerated. That means in jail or prison, and not institutionalized. That means like a nursing home or disabled care. Only the people who are in the labor force and are not working but are actively seeking work are actually considered unemployed. This is a really important point. That means that like retired people are not unemployed. Stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, they are not unemployed. Full-time students are not unemployed. And your friend who's working on his rap album, he's not looking for a job. You can tell that friend, hey, congratulations, you are no longer unemployed because you're not even part of the labor force, right? Individuals who are not in the labor force are not even counted towards the unemployment rate. Now, one final little formula that I need you to know, we already talked about the size of the labor force is employed plus unemployed. There's another thing called the labor force participation rate, which is just the size of the labor force divided by the size of the adult population. And then we just multiply that times 100. That just sort of tells us what percentage of adults are actually participating in the labor force. So what is unemployment? Unemployment means the adult civilians who are not working, but here's that term again, are actively seeking work within the past 4 weeks. Only members of the labor force are even eligible to be counted towards the unemployment rate. And when we talk about the unemployment rate, we just mean the percentage of the labor force that's currently not working but is looking for a job. And that's just defined as the number of unemployed people divided by the labor force times 100. So pretty easy math there. Now, there are two other terms we should talk about real quick, and they're very important for assessing the health of the economy. The first one is the underemployment rate. That means adult civilians who are employed in a job for which they're overqualified, or in a job that's part-time when they would really rather have full-time work. And there's also what are called discouraged workers. That means adult civilians who dropped out of the labor force because they have been consistently unable to find work. So, you've applied at 20 jobs, you've got denied at every single one of them. You might just decide to quit looking for a job and just go move back in with mom and dad. Now, the reason why it's important to talk about these is because obviously these are not good for our economy. It's not good to be underemployed or a discouraged worker. But the unemployment rate cannot capture these two statistics. They don't show up in our unemployment rate. If you're underemployed, technically you are employed, right? And so that means that you don't show up as unemployed because you're working, you have a job, even though it's not really good for you and it's not good for the economy. Same thing with discouraged workers. If you stop looking for work, right, you just drop out of the labor force, then of course we know that we cannot count you towards the unemployment rate. So even though we might have a low unemployment rate, if we have a high number of underemployed and discouraged workers, that doesn't necessarily mean that the economy is doing great. So let's try to see if we can calculate the unemployment rate now that we know the formula. It's pretty simple. So if you need to, pause the video right here and tell me, what was the unemployment rate in July of 2016 in the US? Well, what you need to do here, the unemployment rate is equal to 7.4, which is the number of unemployed individuals, 7.4 million, divided by the size of the labor force, 158 million, and then we're going to multiply times 100. That gives us an unemployment rate of 4.7%. So that means that just before the last presidential election in 2016, the unemployment rate was 4.7%. What's the unemployment rate look like today? Well, here's some statistics from July. So pause the video. Tell me, what was the unemployment rate in July of 2020? Once again, what we're going to have to do is take the number of unemployed people, 16 million, divided by the size of the labor force, 160 million, and then we multiply it times 100, which gives us an unemployment rate of 10%. So that means that currently, right now, the unemployment rate is sitting around 10% just before the 2020 election. Now, one thing I do want to point out real quick is something called the natural rate of unemployment. Now, this might sound kind of crazy, but when we say natural rate of unemployment, we mean the economy is in a normal, healthy state, okay? So just know that when we're at between 4 to 6% unemployment, then everything is normal. Now, you might say, but wait a minute, Mr. White, how can people being unemployed be normal? That's a bad thing, right? Well, economists recognize that 0% unemployment is not possible. Now, some people will always have to be unemployed. Like, think about people changing jobs, or people who got laid off, or new graduates, businesses closing. These things happen, and we expect them to happen. So 0% unemployment just isn't really possible in the real world, even though it sounds nice on paper. Now, one thing that you got to consider is that 0% unemployment would make economic growth impossible. The reason why is because if you were trying to start your own business and there's a 0% unemployment rate, what does that practically mean? Well, it means that there are 0 people in the labor force who are looking for a job. So if you wanted to start your own business, you're going to have a heck of a hard time finding any workers because everybody has a job already who's actually looking for a job. That means that to actually get some workers, you would have to lure them away from other jobs. And what are you probably going to have to do? Yeah, you're probably going to have to pay them a lot of money, which is going to make your business very expensive. And everybody else is going to do the same thing. They're going to have to pay more money to hold on to the workers they already have. This is going to cause inflation in the economy, which is something we're going to talk about later. Now, when economists talk about full employment, this is really important. Full employment just means that we are currently at the natural rate. It does not mean that there is 0 unemployment in the economy, okay? The economy is efficient when we're at full employment, and we're efficient when we're at the natural rate of unemployment. That means that all of our resources are being used and none are being wasted. Remember, I said labor is a factor of production. Now, one important thing we're going to talk about in a later video is that there is no cyclical unemployment at full employment. Now, I know you don't know what cyclical unemployment is yet, but just keep that in mind. Now, the natural rate of unemployment can actually change if there are any major changes in the economy. Like, for example, if we banned unions, that could change the natural rate of unemployment because unions, in some ways, tend to increase unemployment. Other things that could happen is there could be changes in technology that make it easier to match workers with jobs for which they're qualified, things like the internet. That can also change the natural rate of unemployment. So just keep in mind that even though the current natural rate is between 4 to 6%, that could always change in the future. These things are not static. Now, you might have heard me talk about elections a couple slides back, and you might say to yourself, well, why does this unemployment rate matter so much? Well, I think that, I'm filming this video right now in 2020. It's an election year, and it's very important for people who are going to vote to have all the information they need to make a good decision. And one of the big things people think about in an election year is the health of the economy. And unemployment serves as a measure of how healthy our economy is. It's actually one of the most widely reported economic statistics. It's something that you'll hear about when you turn on the nightly news, or if you read an article online, or if you have a conversation with one of your friends about politics. The unemployment rate will frequently come up. Now, sadly, even though it's the most reported of statistics, very few people actually know what it means. And we've already talked about how it can be kind of misleading. So I want to just show you a little clip of a video from 2016 in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election where the unemployment rate became a hot button issue.
Money in politics here. On the stump and in interviews, Donald Trump, the frontrunner on the GOP, has claimed the official unemployment rate is 8 times the published rate. Just this weekend, he told CNN's Don Lemon, quote, As you know, as people give up looking for jobs, all of a sudden they are considered employed statistically. Well, that's not true. They are not counted as employed. They drop out of the labor market if they're not looking for work. And he has said this.
Don't believe those phony numbers when you hear 4.9 and 5% unemployment. The number's probably 28, 29, as high as 35. In fact, I even heard recently 42%.
All of those statistics are not true. To make it to 42% unemployment, he would have to count every single person who is not working and then some. He would have to count students, the elderly, retirees, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, people who don't want to work, people who don't have to work, and to some degree, people who have just given up looking. The official unemployment rate is an active measure of who is looking for work. It currently sits at 4.9%. Now, there's another unemployment rate that is higher. It is also helpful to assess the health of the job market. It's called the underemployment rate. It is 9.7%. Now, that counts people who are looking for work. It counts people who are working part-time, but they want to work full-time. It counts discouraged workers who have given up recently looking for work but would like to work. By no means are 42% of Americans unemployed. Donald Trump has been talking a lot about the trade situation.
Now, interestingly enough, and we all know Donald Trump won in 2016, and when he got into office, his message about the unemployment rate changed slightly.
Obviously, we're very pleased to see the jobs report that came out this morning. It's great news for American workers. During the first full month of the Trump presidency, the economy added 235,000 new jobs, and the unemployment rate ticked down to 4.7%. Notably, we also saw significant growth in the construction, manufacturing, and mining sectors. The unemployment rate ticked down and labor force participation rate ticked up.
In the past, the president has referred to particular job reports as phony or totally fiction. Does the president believe that this jobs report was accurate and a fair way to measure the economy?
Yeah, I talked to the president prior to this, and he said, to quote him very clearly, they may have been phony in the past, but it's very real now.
So as you can see, the unemployment rate can be used as a political weapon. The unemployment rate is not political. It's reported by a nonpartisan government agency called the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they use the same methodology under Barack Obama to measure the unemployment rate as they did under Donald Trump. And as you can see, the numbers are pretty much in line with what we saw in the Obama administration in the first few months of the Trump administration. So what we can see here is there's no real difference in the way that the unemployment rate was measured or anything fundamental like that. And the unemployment rate looks about the same under Obama as it does under Trump. So what do you think? Is the unemployment rate really phony, or was this maybe just politics? I'll let you decide. Now, all politics aside, we can just take a look at the data to see what actually happened with the unemployment rate during the Obama presidency. This shows the unemployment statistics in the United States as recorded by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As I said, it's a nonpartisan organization from January of 2009, which is when Barack Obama took office, until January of 2016, which is when this chart was compiled. Now you'll see there's two different bits of information here. Over here to the right, we've got the unemployment rate, okay, and it's being measured by this red line. Okay, so this red line, we're measuring it over here to the right. On the left-hand side, we've got the number of jobs, the net change in jobs, meaning like number of jobs created or lost, and it's being measured by these blue bars, okay? So you can see that in 2009, when Barack Obama took office, for about that first year, we were losing jobs, and the unemployment rate was heading up. We had a little bit of a dip in 2010 because we had a census back then, and so these are a lot of temporary government workers, but then you can see as soon as the census was over, unemployment started rising again. We had another little spike in the unemployment rate right here. But then after the very end of 2010, what do you notice about the number of jobs created or lost? And what do you notice about the unemployment rate? Well, you can see that the number of jobs created is now positive for the entire rest of the Obama presidency, and the unemployment rate did pretty much nothing except for go down. And when Barack Obama left office, you can see that the unemployment rate was below 5%. According to the natural rate of unemployment, is that good or bad? That's good, right? That's absolutely normal, healthy, efficient economy. So despite what some people might have you think, when Barack Obama left office, the economy was actually doing quite well. And President Trump inherited one of the best economies in U.S. history from Barack Obama. All right, guys, that's it for this first video about unemployment. Make sure you check out the second video about unemployment. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.